Like,
Everybody, we're gonna get started. Probably go slow to start out so people can join, but just wanted to let you know the restrooms are in the back to the right. A few food items here, not anything major, but everybody's really hungry. This is kind of during the dinner hour. So. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm Jenny. Here with Laura Dulugalecki and Misha Setner with our regulatory and policy and outreach section. And Laura's going to lead this meeting tonight, but I just wanted to welcome you all here. In the spirit of collaboration, we're really looking for input on these rules that we really want feedback. Nothing's set in stone. Heard a lot of ideas so far, but having this be more of a discussion-based forum, we wanted to be able to really work on some of the topic areas. And there will be more formal making public meetings where, it's the more what people are used to, where everybody has 2 minutes to say comments and whatnot, but we kind of wanted to get away from that a little bit. For these pre-rulemaking meetings, it's more of a kind of brainstorming phase. So really appreciate you all coming out, and this is our first time using this room, by the way. It's really cool. When you speak, we don't need to pass it. There's lots of microphones in the ceiling that apparently going in on your voice.
Yeah, so. All those little X's above everybody.
Yeah, super high tech.
Apparently it can zero right in on what, if you're speaking next to somebody, it will still zero in on you.
I've never seen this.
I don't know about the video. Yeah, zooming in on me.
No, so there's three cameras on the room.
Okay, yeah.
The views around.
It's super cool.
Sure. Can people online hear us okay? They get a thumbs up if people handshake. Okay, great.
So, I'll be taking notes, and Misha's going to work on admitting folks online and everything. So.
Keeping folks muted. So,
yeah, I'll make an announcement. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. You are at the first of 2 pre-rulemaking meetings on Vermont's use of public waters rules. We're covering the same. But of course, you can probably be different types of conversations at each meeting. Just a second.
Okay.
I'm jamming out.
I can only get one, folks. So Johnson.
Lisa Johnson.
All right.
God.
Video.
I'm having happy hour still.
Thank you, Lisa.
Dave?
Yep,
that's Lisa.
You're in Lakeville.
Okay. Okay, hold on just a super.
Need some help. Can I do that too?
Okay. Let me just, I think somehow this sharing. So I'm so sorry. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna start over. Okay. Okay.
That is unverified.
Okay, so we're back where we started. Okay, and there we go. Now this works. Okay. Always a little bit of technical difficulties. So as Jenny said, welcome to this pre-rulemaking meeting. The goal of this meeting is to present some of our proposed changes to the Vermont's use of public waters rules and get feedback on this. And as Jenny said, my name is Laura Dulugalecki. I work as the Lakes and Ponds Program Policy and Outreach Coordinator. If you're online, please remain muted. As you know, as you just witnessed, we can hear everything and leads to feedback, so everybody just have a easy
Close to or what?
listening experience. Oh,
This is Zoom?
Yes.
Please
Well, I
mute
told
your
you I was.
microphones.
I said I was either going to go to Montpelier.
Okay. And, okay. All right.
Who's unmuting?
All right, we'll carry on. So, and also just as a note to everybody, this is being recorded and we'll have this posted on our Lakes and Ponds rulemaking webpage. I'll have a link to that webpage on the last slide, but that's where we've been kind of putting all of our communications documents on that webpage. So before we engage in formal rulemaking, we do this phase called pre-rulemaking, where we are soliciting feedback from the public. We provide information about what we're thinking, what we're proposing, share those types of materials, and we usually have public meetings and have a public comment period. I'm going to share our proposed changes today. We've received a lot of feedback already from the public for the last 2 years about wake sports, and we've incorporated a lot of what we've learned into these proposed changes. So we're here to hear your suggestions. And then here's just kind of an agenda of what I'm planning to cover tonight. I anticipate probably about 20 minutes covering Vermont's, like our proposed changes to Vermont's use of public waters rules. And after that, I'm sorry, I didn't really get a chance to talk about this that much, but after our welcome and our going through these proposed changes, we'll move into this topical conversations portion, which is really going to be the bulk of tonight's meeting, where we're going to where we want to hear your input. Okay, so I'm going to start, probably take about 20 minutes or so to give you a little context of the use of public waters rules, talk about the existing wake sports rule, identify some of the problem areas, and then I'm going to walk through our proposed changes to the use of public waters rules. And, yes. Oh.
Somebody's saying online that the audio's cutting in. And
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure why, but it
Okay.
might be that
Well, yes. When I turn away. Yeah. The guy told me that often this pick up the speakers enough, but I will just be better about this. Thank you. Yeah, that's true. All right. So just a little background, history, and context. The use of public waters statute was adopted in 1969, and it gave the authority for an entity to make rules about recreational uses of public waters. For many, many years, that entity was the Water Resources Board, followed by the Water Resources Panel. And this group of folks would review petitions and proposals to make rules for specific water bodies on specific lakes. In 1994, this group came together and made the use of public waters rules, which was a more formalized set of use of public waters rules that apply to all public lakes and ponds across the state. And then they added all of these older rules that started being made in the 70s about specific lakes in an appendix to the use of public waters rules. And so that's the base of the document we have now. It was like the first iteration of the use of public waters rules. In 2012, the rulemaking authority was transferred from the Water Resources Panel to the Agency of Natural Resources. These rules were designed to regulate uses on public waters and to resolve conflicts. So typically the rules are used to regulate what type of vessels can be where, speed limits of those vessels, what time of day, location on a water body where these types of activities can happen. And they were really meant to resolve use conflicts between different recreational uses. And the use of public waters rules is meant to be a living document that can be updated over time and be responsive to new issues. So in the 90s, when personal watercraft, also known as jet ski, about new rules were made. There were seaplane issues that came up at some point that were added into these use of public waters rules. So as the agency, when we're reviewing proposed rules, we have a different kind of a unique role being part of the executive branch, and it differs from how past entities may have reviewed use of public waters rules, petitions, or proposals. We have to balance multiple considerations, including environmental impacts and public access. And we have to make these decisions as an agency that are consistent and objective, based in science and or technical information that can be applied consistently across the state. And this is a little different than how other entities like the legislature or how the Water Resources Board could react to public opinion. That's not really how we base our decisions. So, you know, in the future, it could be the role of the legislature to take a different stance than the state agency, but something like a complete ban on wake sports is not really within our authority of something the agency can do. Another, I mentioned that we have to take access into consideration. So a complete prohibition of a use is not within our authority without the proper justification to do so. We would need a lot of data to demonstrate that this is necessary to resolve a statewide conflict. So we're charged with regulating uses with a less restrictive approach and making sure that our decisions are not arbitrary. A complete ban on wake sports statewide would not really be legally defensible and would likely be considered arbitrary. So we currently have a use of public waters rule about wake sports that's been in place since 2024, a little over a year, and a lot of thought and compromise went into this process to create a definition of a wake sports zone, objective and based in science, and designed to be protective of the resource to prevent shoreline erosion and prevent lakebed turbidity, and to be really protective of, and to help meet our state's water quality goals. And so this existing rule limited wake sports to 30 inland lakes, and then also included provisions that were intended to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species through the Home Lake Sticker Program and the proof of decontamination requirement. Prior to adopting the new rule, we began to hear a lot of feedback that the rule didn't properly or adequately address safety, and that the rule didn't adequately account for the cumulative impacts of multiple wake boats inside the wake sports zone, and that there wasn't adequate protections for nesting loons and the impacts to nesting loons. And these are all things that we think are important considerations. And as you know, as I mentioned, this is a working document. And so through this iteration of rulemaking, these are things that are important to address and to re-examine. And then when it came time to implement this rule in the first summer, 2024, the biggest hurdle that we had was the implementation of the Home Lake Rule and the proof of decontamination. Based on the timing of the adoption of the new rule, we knew that having a very comprehensive sticker program that first summer would be kind of difficult. But we really started looking into how to run a Home Lake sticker program and to plan for the future. And as we did this, we really realized there was a lot of issues with the language of the rule and how it was proposed. And that's why we've kind of come to the conclusion to change these items moving forward. So this is the text of the Home Lake Rule. And it basically says that a boat should stay in one lake per year and that they should get a sticker to represent that lake. But if the operator wants to travel between lakes, then they would need to get a decontamination. And this is very difficult because there's no way to track wake boats across the state or wake boats coming in and out of the state. The Department of Motor Vehicles, where folks go to register their motorboats, they don't distinguish between whether or not a boat is a motorboat or not. The DMV is not willing to begin doing this. So this is a huge challenge to administering a sticker program. We can't even find wake boats. And I don't think this was fully understood prior to adding this language into the rule. And then tracking wake boats that visit from Canada or other states is not something that we really have the infrastructure capacity to take on. So our working solution last summer and this summer remains the same. It's to really keep the intent of the home lake rule just without the stickers. So it's to require that when wake boats travel between water bodies, that they have to be decontaminated following our guidelines. So although there wasn't a sticker, so it wasn't implemented exactly as written, because of the reasons I was describing, it's implemented in a functionally equivalent manner to ensure that wake boats traveling between different water bodies are decontaminated. And the greeters at the access areas, they perform risk assessments and interviews to find out where boats were prior, to determine if they needed decontamination. So this reaches the same goal to prevent the spread of invasive species. And I think that this provision was really well-meaning, but under our current conditions, it's not really workable. The sticker doesn't provide any additional protection. We have these existing regulatory tools under 1454 or the transport law that we can more heavily rely on for meeting our decontamination goals. And of course, there's a ton of room for improvement within the existing infrastructure and within our greeter program. There are ways to make the system more robust. I mean, it'd be fantastic to have more help stations on the state. But we can really lean on these existing rules and program and messaging and efforts to meet the same goals. Because administering a sticker program would be a gigantic administrative burden for less than 1% of boats in the state. In 2024, there were 187 reported launches of wake boats. So that doesn't mean unique wake boats. That could be the same boat going to the same access area day after day. But 187 wake boat launches reported at public access areas. And out of that, 167 of them were visiting the same lake again and again. So they weren't actually traveling. That means in 2024, we have a recording of 20 boats traveling between lakes. And they would have been required to be decontaminated. So I'm going to go through a summary of our proposed changes. First, I'm going to talk about our proposed changes to the definition of a wake sport zone and some of the changes that are specific to wake sports. I'm going to talk a little bit about our proposed changes regarding the home lake contamination, and then I'll touch on other changes. I'm kind of going through this a little faster than I did. We had a recorded July 1 webinar that's got a little bit more information, and there's some additional materials on our rulemaking webpage that you can peruse if you want to see the tracked changes document of all our proposed changes. There's more information on the website. Okay, so this is our proposed changes to the definition of a wake sports zone. We received a lot of feedback from folks concerning conflicts on the smaller end of the wake sports eligible lakes. A lot of people talked about the cumulative impacts of multiple boats in a smaller wake sports zone, or one wake boat being in a smaller wake sports zone, kind of dominating all other uses in the lake. And so one of the ways that we were looking at trying to reduce the conflict to address those issues was changing the definition of a wake sports zone so that it be at least 3,000 feet long, that it have 100 contiguous acres instead of 50. And then we also proposed doing a little bit of shape normalization to the wake sports zone. So I'll talk about each of those points. So the 3,000 foot length was based on some conversations and observations about typical wake sports behavior. So wake boats tend to travel around 10 to 12 miles per hour when they want to create an enhanced wake. And about a 3-minute straight run equals 3,000 feet. So that's where that number came from. The shape normalization, these were based on a lot of recommendations we received from the public. The idea is to use standard GIS protocols to smooth the shapes of the wake sports zones so that it's more intuitive if people are in or out of a wake sports zone. It provides a little bit of a buffer so that you are more confidently within the wake sports zone. So that's good for compliance. And I can show a couple visualizations here. So here's Echo Lake in Charleston. On the bottom is the existing wake sports zone. And, you can just see it's following the natural shoreline, which is variable. And then this shape normalization kind of takes off that narrow strip at the bottom. It kind of mimics more just typical behavior, and it kind of ensures folks remain in the wake sports zone while they're doing wake sports. It's really noticeable here, Salem Lake, where one side is very jagged, but you just kind of smooth it to make it, more easy to stay within the zone. And then the final component of the change to the definition is this 100 acres. And this number kind of fell out to us after looking at all the 30 wake sport zones under this 3,000 foot length requirement and doing the shape smoothing. And we, acknowledge in other parts in our rule that the wake sports waves have an impact at about 500 feet. So if you imagined a 3,000 foot long rectangle with 500 feet on either side, as that's the impact zone of a wake sports run. So I'll kind of show you what this looks like on a map. So this is Lake Fairleigh, and if you were to put one of those rectangles, a 3,000 foot long rectangle, 1,000 feet across, on lakes that were less than 100 acres, there's not really room for one or even a full one of these rectangles, which kind of shows that wake sports would probably, if wake sports were occurring in the wake sports zone, it would be dominating that area and have kind of that exclusionary effect. But once we got up above 100 acres, there was opportunity to fit in multiple rectangles so that there could be less conflict, where it wasn't dominating, that one activity wouldn't be dominating the entire wake sports zone. And of course, as you get to larger and larger lakes, there's more and more of these rectangles that fit. This is what the proposed, this is what the 30 lakes, how they would be impacted under this proposed change to a definition of a wake sports zone. So the lakes shown in orange are ones that would no longer have the criteria to have a wake sports zone. And all the ones that say yes, they would be. All the ones that are highlighted are lakes that submitted petitions to our agency requesting a ban on wake sports. Of note, Molly's Falls down there at the bottom is an interesting test case. Shortly after the original rule went into place, there was a change in the way the dam was managed, and the water level was permanently lowered. And it was lowered so much that the lake no longer had a criteria to meet a wake sports zone. So it technically doesn't meet the criteria for wake sports, but the way the use of public waters rules is written is that whether or not a lake is eligible is written into the rules, and we can't change it without going through formal. So for example, here's what it looks like in the Appendix A of these public waters rules. It says wake sports prohibited under, this is Black Pond, for example. If some kind of change in condition were to happen, if we wanted to add wake sports prohibited or remove wake sports prohibited for some reason, we can't be responsive in a timely manner without going through rulemaking, which is a 6 to 8 month process typically. So one other proposal that we have in this that would affect kind of the wake sports definition section is that rather than listing out whether or not wake sports are prohibited in the appendices for each water body, is that we would keep a list that we would update annually. And if something were to change, like a water level were to change, or there were to be some sort of lake management activity that wake sports would interfere with, that we could move forward without going through rulemaking, but there would be a public outreach process. So it wouldn't be done without public input, but it would have to be based on criteria, very specific criteria. So some other changes that we've proposed have to do with a requirement to have a 500 foot offset from active loon nesting sites during loon nesting season. The current default is 300 feet for all vessels. We also propose having a safety offset of 500 feet in place for wake sports from all other users. And then we are proposing to remove the home lake provision within the wake sports rule based on some of the issues I talked about before, and to remove the proof of decontamination requirement because we don't really have the infrastructure for these provisions. And for the proof of decontamination, the standards are not really clear as written. But we want to preserve the intent and the section of this rule, which is the prevention of the spread of aquatic invasive species. And so in this place of these, we propose to add a decontamination section to the use of public waters rules to further clarify roles and responsibilities. We want to link it better. We want to link the use of public waters rules to the transport statute, which to further strengthen our enforcement capabilities. We want to include the penalties in the use of public waters rules. And we want to reference decontamination procedures, guidance, and roles and responsibilities for the agency and the greater programs. And I can show you in a little bit some of the language that we plan to, that we're proposing to. So there are, as I mentioned, there's a tracked changes document showing all of our proposed language at this point. There's several administrative type updates that we've talked about. There's some errors we found, rearranging things, you know, kind of small details, but we are thinking of looking at the use of public waters rules as a whole and making an overhaul. We want to also link to other statutes that cover the rules of vessels, namely the motor vehicle statute. There is a section in the use of public waters rules that talks about municipal delegation. This is something that in all the history of the use of public waters rules, I've only seen a few examples, and this has only been for municipalities to get delegation to manage mooring fields. I've not seen it ever used for another purpose, but there's not a lot of language in the rules about this. And so we felt like it was important to include a process for how delegation could be requested, the roles and responsibilities, you know, who's the burden of enforcement and cost, and kind of actually getting all of that out in writing about how these are supposed to work. And importantly, a clarification that's in the use of public waters statute, that delegated municipalities are required to follow the use of public waters rules. So it's not a way to make your own local rules. Another piece that we'd like to add into the use of public waters rules is the ability to have temporary use restrictions to address public safety issues and emergency situations. So in the past, not this summer, but the past 2 summers during some severe flooding events, there were high water events on lakes. And we've heard a lot of feedback from the public that folks were out, you know, high-speed boating, causing some large waves on properties that were already experiencing flooding. And they were asking, well, can't you put a 5 miles per hour speed limit during this time of emergency? And we did not have the authority, but having something like this in here, you know, that's very clear. It has to be a state of emergency. It can only be 15 days, you know, whatever it might be, but that it's for a specific purpose to address, you know, address these emergency situations. So this is a little overview of rulemaking. So we're right now in this pre-rulemaking phase where we kind of start off with some draft proposed language. Nothing is set in stone, but we're soliciting feedback from the public, stakeholders. We have a written public comment period right now, and we're going to incorporate all those concerns. And then our goal is to come out with a strong rule from everybody's input and things that we've learned over time. And then we would move into formal rulemaking, which means we file a rule with the ICAR, or the Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules. It also gets filed with the Secretary of State. And at that point, a formal rulemaking session begins, and there's a formal public comment period, public meetings, and then a final proposed rule is filed with LCAR, or the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. That signals the end of the public comment period, and LCAR reviews it, and if they choose to adopt it, they file the final adopted rule with the Secretary of State's office. So it's a lengthy process, but it allows for a lot of participation, time for review, a lot of the public input that is so important to this process. This is the timeline that we have up on our webpage. So we are here in July with our public meetings, and our goal is late summer to have gone through all of the comments and written and verbal, and to take those and to craft a proposed rule. And we'll share that again with the public, but hoping to submit something to ICAR in October-ish time. So the written public comment period is open until August 19th. We have an email address here that you can send these to, your comments to. It's really helpful because other people use this email address. So if you can just have Wake Sports or something similar in the subject line, that's very helpful. And then, as I mentioned, we have this Lakes and Ponds rulemaking webpage where we keep all the information about this process. We announce meetings, we post the video recordings of all these meetings. Okay. So we're going to move into our discussion portion of the meeting. So, this is a little bit of a departure from how past meetings where people come up and say a prepared statement. I understand it could be a little bit outside of folks' comfort zone. To have this opportunity to have a discussion and to get focused feedback on certain topics. So what we'll do is we'll try to go back and forth in the room and online to call on people. So just raise your hand online or in the room. If you are online, you can also just put your question in the chat. That's fine. I'll show you in a minute, but we have a couple sections pulled out that I thought people might have specific comments and questions on, but we have reserved time for this other category, which really could be anything, and we welcome any topics. So we will get there. We want to keep comments concise. We're not cutting people off exactly at 2 minutes or so, but keeping it around in that area will help give everybody a chance to speak and to keep us on track. And if you have more extensive comments and thoughts, please send them in writing. We will read and review every single written comment. So we're going to start with the Wake Sports Zone definition. We'll talk about safety offsets, municipal delegation, the removal of the home lake rule, and decontamination and replacement with the decontamination section. And then we'll have the other topics. And I have a couple ones pulled out as well that folks have recommended to me. So I'm just going to have this up here on the screen showing the red line shows what the proposed changes are to the Wake Sports Zone definition. And I would like to open it up to see if anybody has any thoughts and concerns about this definition, suggestions. Yeah. Yes.
I don't understand what you mean by the wake zone definition. Are you saying that a wake boat can be anywhere within that zone?
Yes.
How does that relate to clearances to swimmers and kayakers and other boaters? For instance, if they're on the edge of one of those wake sports zones and they're X number of feet from the shore or from another swimmer, I mean, how is that dealt with? Are you saying that these are specific zones that no wake boat can be outside of, or how does that work?
So the way that the rule is written now is that there are these 30 lakes that are eligible to have wake sports zones, meaning they have the right size, depth, acreage, where we have said wake sports can occur within that zone, but it also says it's not exclusionary. So wake sports, somebody could conduct right now under how the pool is. If you're on a lake that is wake sports eligible and has a wake sports zone, you can conduct wake sports within that zone alongside other users, other recreational users. The current law is that you have to be 200 feet away from other users. So it's the area we have determined is minimizes impacts to the environment.
You said 200 feet to other users, but actually your new proposal is calling for 500 feet.
Correct. I was just saying that's what the current rule is.
Just I'm having a little hard time visualizing how that works along with the other uses of the lake.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people using
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. It's not exclusionary, and it's not reserved just for wake sports.
I make a suggestion for folks if you're called on in the room, maybe you say your name first so I can.
My name is Charlie Page.
Thank you, Charlie.
Jim Morgan.
Okay, Jim Morgan, you can unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I'm Jim Morgan and I live on Lake Fairleigh and I have the only operating wake boat on the entire lake that for wake sports. And I'll just talk about one thing, and that is this list of lakes which are or not have wake sports is based on acreage, I guess. And within the slides you showed for Lake Fairleigh, I saw 3 different acreages presented. I saw 96, 94, and 90. Now, any measurement has a standard deviation. So however you measure the lakes, it's got to be plus or minus a certain degree of uncertainty. If we're 96 and it's +4, we're 100. So I don't quite get how you just come up with a number and say you're out or you're in. Also, the next nearest lake to us is 85, I believe it was, 85 acres. And we stand alone between being able to have it and not have it. So that was the first thing I noticed that I don't understand. I suspect I could get you a private survey, GPS oriented, of the acreage of this lake, and it might be 98 plus or minus 3 acres, which would, on the positive side, put us within this. On the negative side, it wouldn't. And that has to be addressed because we are so close that for me to lose that privilege on this lake seems almost targeted. And that makes me feel badly because after the rules were made last year, I made a decision to keep my boat. It never leaves the lake. It's only been used on this lake. And I'm feeling a little bit whiplash, but I'd like somebody to address the standard deviation of those measurements because you're basing a lot on that cutoff. And why you would choose 100 based on what? Public comment, the idea that it might be better than say 90 has no basis, in fact, that I can tell. So thank you very much for letting me speak, and I'll continue to listen to the meeting.
Thank you. Did anybody have any follow-up to that?
That's a good point to make.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yes.
I just wanted to follow up to the, sorry, I forgot your name already, but I understand that a lot of ecological data has been incorporated into thinking around the rules, but I would like to understand human safety rules that have been incorporated into these decisions. If you could explain a little bit about that.
Your name?
And sorry, my name is Kama Garrison. I'm on Caspian Lake.
What's your first name? Sorry.
Kama, K-A-M-A.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's not a lot of objective scientific data about safety offsets beyond some of the very basic ones that we already have in place for the state. The 200-foot is accepted, 200-foot offset is accepted as safe for most boating scenarios and between other users. And that's been the standard in our state and in a lot of other places as well, we extended in our proposed safety offset, which we'll be talking about that in a minute. We proposed extending it based on our data that it takes a wake boat 500 feet to dissipate its wave to that of a traditional motorboat. So if we wanted to, we were worried about the impact of large waves on other people, other users, then that's kind of the thinking to get to that safe. But again, there's not like some gold standard, some exact number out there. Want to pick someone from online, Misha?
Stuff, we've got Janice Dunham.
Janice Dunham? Janice, if you are muted. Hello, Janice. I don't know if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. Should we try somebody else from online?
Yeah, let's go to Rodney Putnam.
All right, Rodney Putnam, you can go ahead and speak.
Hi, my name is Rodney Putnam. My year-round residence and my family, we live on Lake Iroquois in Heinsberg. This is my little app that I keep on the dash of my wake boat. I'm one of 3 on our lake. And again, my struggle is kind of like Jim with the 3,000 foot zone. Where this lake, all the users do a really good job of sharing the lake. There's a slalom water ski course at the top of the lake. And if the skiers are out at the top of the lake using the course, we stay to the bottom end of the lake. And, you know, we don't want to interrupt their good time and vice versa. And so with this map, I don't know if you can see it somewhere, but anyways, there's kind of an island, a little rock that protrudes about halfway down the lake. And we stay south of that lake. So, you know, potentially if this is I don't know exactly what the length of this map allows me to go in a full run, but half the time, you know, we're teaching, you know, friends, people fall. We only use half of what I could use, and we have a great time, and we stay out of other people's way and vice versa, and share the lake. And I kind of feel like this 3,000 foot thing is, you know, honestly, as somebody who's been surfing for 10 years, 3,000 feet, my legs are burning. That's a really long run. I've given up by then. You know, we've swapped riders, we've changed direction and such. So I don't, you know, it seems like, anyways, I think you see where I'm coming from. But I think this 3,000 foot rule, where it came from, I don't know if it could be from the beginning. Sorry, I've got so many ideas in my head, but there's so much to this activity that is so lake specific. There was only 3 boats when we got here 10 years ago, and there's only 3 boats here now. There's a couple that trailer in, but it's a pretty low activity lake, and we've done a great job of, I think, all users sharing the lake. So sorry, I'll get out of the way, but thanks for your time on that.
All right. Thank you. You've got your hand up first.
Excuse me, Bob Fairbanks. You said something in your opening remarks that kind of disturbed. That had to do with the standard of request, the standard of a request to ban, outright ban. That would be considered contrary and capricious, therefore dismissed out of hand. Is that based on your opinion? Is that based on a legal opinion that you've received?
Yeah, we have gotten that based on legal advice.
Of banning?
Like, yeah, an outright state ban.
Has it ever been tested? I mean, has that taken testimony in any of your committee meetings and challenged them?
I'm having trouble hearing.
This fan is like blasting right over there. I'm having a hard time hearing folks in the
I'm
back.
just asking what's the basis for the statement that if you're asking for, you're asking for, banning it, if that's contrary, that would be treated as contrary and capricious. In other words, basically you wouldn't hear it.
I mean, I would say that's a little bit off topic from the changes in the definition of a wake sports zone, but
Well, you
banning
in
it,
your opening statements.
yeah, but banning it, so we have to, part of the use of public waters rules, we have to contemplate access. And it would be somewhat arbitrary to completely ban a use across the state. That's, there's not the justification.
In the public use, in the use of public waters rules, there's a requirement for us to use the least restrictive approach to manage conflicts. So that's where we're kind of tied to that.
That doesn't mean you have to deny it solely on the basis.
It's true, you know, if we were
You have to
to
hear
ban,
the evidence, and you do have to consider.
we were advised that we were opening ourselves to legal risk, and that, you know, there's been other instances.
You might be anyway.
States being to be careful there, and
Okay.
It would have to be considered. Okay.
So any other, well, let's take one from another one online about the wake sports zone definition.
Let's see, Emily Doe is next.
Okay, Emily? Oh, I think you're muted, Emily. Okay. Nope, can't hear you.
How about that? Is that
Yep.
better?
Yes.
Sorry, not used to Teams. So my statement and question is around the acreage moving from 100 to 50. And a couple of things I was thinking about around this is it does feel a little arbitrary because as I can understand it, there is no scientific data that says that this is scientifically makes a difference or supports anything that would validate that decision. Similar to what Rodney said, I was thinking a lot about how we play nice on the lake. Everybody doing all kinds of sports and working together. And, you know, the idea that just one sport zone, that's still enough. Because if someone was out there, you know, someone had put in that day on the lake and was out doing surfing, then that's not what I would choose to do at that time, because I would want them to enjoy that activity, that they would have that space. And based on the rules of the length and the size, you really couldn't put 2 boats in there at that time. But in truth, that's the same with tubing, and that's the same with water skiing. You're not going to have 2 boats ripping through the water skiing course because it's not safe. If someone fell, if someone came up behind them, if someone was turning one way and turning the other way, like those are just good safety boating practices. And so just because Lake Fairley only has one zone doesn't mean it should be excluded from the list. One zone is better than no zones, in my opinion. And because we all follow safe boating rules, if someone was in there, then I would choose to not be. And it feels a little arbitrary to me because I used to be a sailor and teach sailing on Lake Fairley. I am still a sailor, not as much as I used to, but often the camps are out in the middle of the lake doing regattas, which is lovely. But they have massive courses set up with their buoys, with the boats going through them. And you know what happens? We can't go tubing. We can't go water skiing. We can't, because we're not going to make that unsafe for the kids. And so at some point, we have to respect that when they're out there doing that, that's what they're doing. And like Rodney said, we go to the other part of the lake. But if I'm out there doing my wake surfing, I would hope that someone's not going to just intentionally rip through my course to mess it up for me. So I don't think that it should be eliminated just because there's only one wake sport zone. To me, one is better than none. And the 50 just doesn't have any valid reasoning for it, except for it sounds good and eliminates Lake Fairley. And again, like I've said before, this feels very targeted to us. Thank you.
Another comment about the definition in the room. First, yeah.
Amy McLaughlin. So first of all, I just want to say one of the best things that's happened is that since the rule was proposed, there have been we've seen no complaints. We're a wake surfing family. There's been no conflict. People have not come up and had any problems with us. Everybody seems, happy about it. We actually had a pontoon boat trying to jump off the back of our wake at one point. They probably were the unsafe people. But the good news is the rules are working. I guess my question is that the ANR stated in the last rules that the 50 use with the, excuse me, I'm just trying to figure out here, that it did not leave any, it didn't, so I'm going to say this again. The wake sport zone with the minimum of 50 continuous acres and at least the 20 feet deep and the 500 feet to shore adequately dissipated the energy of the wave. So like, you actually published that a year and a half ago and said that that was the truth. And I'm so confused as to why that has changed, because as someone that's out in the lake that sees this, we'd love you to come see it happen on our lake, because nothing's changed. If anything, there hasn't been conflict. And so I really think that we do not need to be making changes to a rule that's not creating any conflict, and rules that you set and made statements that said this is reasonable. So thanks.
Right. Do we have any other questions online or suggestions about the wake sports zone definition? Are you unmuted, Julie?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Hi, I just wanted to comment, the three people, I don't know their names, that just spoke, and it was very well, and I understood they are owners of the wakeboard boats and live on the lake, and it sounds great, and I'm happy for that. My concern is when we talked about people coming from other lakes and from other areas, which may not have the same regard for the lakes because, they're just coming for the day or what have you. You have to rely on people's knowledge of safety. I'm at Lake Willoughby, and I'm not really a boater or a sailor. I'm a kayaker and actually a swimmer. I'm also part of a community of swimmers who are disabled. And so what I get concerned about is even when there's speedboats, which I know they're not following the rules of the wake because I've been caught up in it, or I've either just been sitting on my own dock and I know that they're too close and they don't slow down, and there's no enforcement. And so my concern, because of Lake Willoughby being as large as it is, and I don't know all the lakes, so excuse me for not knowing all your individual lakes, but if I'm on the other side of the lake swimming where Mount Hoare is, that's it's challenging for me, and that's why I do it. But I'm also concerned that there's not a lot of access for emergency recovery on that side. So I'm at the will of the boater and their knowledge and their, carefulness. I don't know who's all on this call, but I would guess that it's mostly people like me and the other two speakers who I respect what they're saying about, the man who kept his boat and wants to be able to keep using the wake boat on his lake. We have a respect for it because it's ours, but I'm just concerned about others and people maintaining that respect. And that's my comment. Thank you.
So I'm wondering if anybody in the room has a specific comment about this definition of a wake sports zone.
I'm Danny Sharp. I'm Lake Iroquois. I've been with Responsible Lake since we were formed. I support this rule wholeheartedly. First of all, the definition. With respect to the comment about standard deviations, we would say that there is a scientific principle called the precautionary principle, which we think is very important in anticipating future uses, which is an integral part of the public use of waters rules. That precautionary principle, together with this proposed change, is something that I wholeheartedly support.
Let's go to the online, and maybe we'll take a couple more from each and then move to another topic. So somebody online.
Chris Owen.
Okay, Chris Owen.
Hey, good evening, and I know Laura is a tough timekeeper, so I will keep it brief. And I hope this qualifies in this topic. The 20-foot depth for the wake sports zone is inadequate, and I noticed it's not been broached in terms of this particular pre-rulemaking or rule proposal. Recent studies have been coming out suggesting disturbance to the bottom and even topwater vegetation as deep as 27 or deeper than 30 feet. With wake boats getting larger, disturbance to the bottom will only get greater. I know a lot of this is dwelt only on the recreational aspect of it, but I implore DEC, its limnologists and benthic specialists to weigh in on this and say, do what is right for our lake bottoms. The fish I love to catch in all these lakes, the forage fish, the mayflies, the dragonflies, the crustaceans and vertebrates that live there, and come at it from an environmental aspect in making up the new rule. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Lengel from Lake Elmore, and I can answer two questions that have been asked. One is, where did the 3,000-foot length come from? And it comes from work done by the wakeboat industry itself and their instructional materials, which lay out a typical wakeboat run and say that when you're teaching this, that teach how to get the boat started, form the wake, get the surfer on the rope, have them drop the rope, give them a little time to surf, and then slow down again and drop them off. That's where that came from. The second, where does the 100 acres come from? It comes from multiplying what what you folks, DEC staff, recommended to the secretary, which was 600 feet on each side. That it takes 600 feet for the wave to dissipate on each side. You multiply 1,200 feet times 3,000 or 4,000 feet, and you get 100 acres, just about. That's where that came from.
Thank you. I think we should move to another topic, but there will be more time. I just want to get through a couple topics, have some time at the end as well. And if we want to hear everybody's, so we can try to accommodate as many comments and thoughts as that we can fit in.
Very helpful with the topics. If we stay,
if we stay on the topic,
we tend to get off on our opinions and it's about other things. If we stayed on topic, we would
probably
everybody would be able to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
For that. Okay, so this next one is the safety offset. Our proposed language, where we propose that when a wake boat is engaged in wake sports, that it stay 500 feet from other users as opposed to the 200-foot offset that's currently required. This below shows the language that we've proposed to include in the use of public waters rules. Do you want to see if anybody online has a comment about that?
Yeah, some folks that put their hands down, but art and style be the next. Art would like to comment on proposed safety offset.
So Art, would you like to comment on the safety
This is
offset?
Art.
Okay,
Art
thanks.
Lyle. I don't know whether you've got me or not on speaker.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm assuming that Laura, you presented the whole thing. I wasn't sure, but it sounded like you, so
Yes.
thank you very much. You weren't introduced. Question, back last year, a lot of petitions were sent in to for vision as to different changes that were recommended. A number of the lakes represented themselves as allowing wake boats, but not wanting wake sports. Wake sports is the dumping of any ballast water from any of the lake if they come in and they're not recognized. Now you're letting, by the definition of your wake sports, you're letting all boats, all wake boats, allowed in all of the lakes that you've approved to empty their ballast tanks no matter where they've come from. Being at Willoughby, I feel very, very close to the south end of Memphremagog. And that should answer the question about zebra mussels. The other thing, Laura, that you had up is you had up a time schedule starting at the end of a season and running over to the next season so it would be effective in the following season. Many of these petitions were submitted prior to the end and obviously had plenty of time to be reviewed and acted upon. And it seems like they were all dismissed as being practiced for something. And I feel very, very bad for all the people that have put in the time, the thought, and the energy to go through and review all the information's out there and have something totally new come in, especially on wake sports. And I thank you for the time of speaking. And I will stop with that. Thank you.
All right, let's try to stay on topic. Let's talk about the safety offset. Yeah, yes.
Sal Perla, I'm on Harvey's Lake.
Safety offset.
We were the 8th smallest lake of the 30. We're now the 8th. We're now the smallest lake of the 18 that were approved. With regard to this rule, in our case, what we're planning on doing is putting buoys to mark off the wake zone. And I think the inclination of any wake sporter using that zone will believe that they have the right to use the entire zone. And putting this rule, which makes a lot of sense, it's going to be very difficult to have it enforced and have it followed because wake boaters are going to have a tough enough time figuring out where the wake zone is, let alone where 500 feet from a canoe or a swimmer or a sailboat is. Second point is if you're going to have this rule, and I think you should have it, it should be measured from any existing moorings and docks and swim platforms that are on the lake. A lot of these populated lakes are surrounded with 30-foot docks, almost the entire perimeter of the lake. It would make sense to measure the 500 feet from the end of those docks rather than from the shoreline, so that this rule could be followed.
Thank you. You know, one thing I'm kind of realizing with this style is online, it's hard to know what people have their hands raised for. And so
A lot of folks just immediately put their hands up like half hour ago.
yeah.
Ask them to put them down.
Yeah, maybe the folks online could put their hands down and then put them back up if they have a question about safety, the safety offset. That way we can more appropriately follow the way this meeting could work. Or alternatively, the folks online could put a comment in the chat as well.
I guess next, the hand up that's still been up, Lisa Johnson.
All right, Lisa Johnson. Okay.
Those hands.
Here for a couple of weeks now.
Muted.
Last time we had. Different colors.
I have the power to put people's hands down. I don't.
Okay.
Don't have.
Okay, well, okay. Do. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to, I put some hands down and then, Thomas Dunn, I believe you just put your hand up, so,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Thank you.
On Ava Lake, we have a raft. It's 300 feet from shoreline. It's used by people for various, and it's in 8 feet of water. It's used by people for various uses, including swimming, sunbathing, and the like. Is the wake boat zone required to be 500 feet from that raft?
Currently, the offset is from shore.
Under the new rule?
No,
Is
it's
it-
still
is it
from
an
shore.
anchored or is it an anchored or moored vessel?
If someone's,
Oh,
somebody's using the raft, did he say it's a raft?
yeah,
Swim raft.
Swim raft.
yeah, swim raft.
Another user that.
Yeah,
It's 200.
I don't think rafts are moored vessels.
They are.
Well, are they? They are moored vessels?
raft
I
is
know a raft is like a
Coast Guard.
The point is, you should make it
Yeah.
possible for us to, you
Yeah.
should make
Yeah.
it possible by your language to make it possible for us to enjoy our raft.
That should be a 3 hour. Yeah, and I imagine, it would be a user like a swimmer too, so.
Yeah, if there's like people using it.
Yeah.
Why is that different from a dock? A dock doesn't contain or require that people use it.
It's on average.
Yeah, yeah.
Raft is a vessel.
You just add the words anchorage of docks or rafts.
Yeah,
Move on.
that's a good suggestion that we have. Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben McLaughlin, Lake Fairleigh. This 500-foot offset from other uses or 200 versus the 200, it's outrageous. There's nothing ever close to it anywhere else in the country. I believe this is punitive, based in fear. I have extensive experience in wake sports, including wake surfing, amongst a lot of other users, swimmers, sailing, paddle boarders. Who's less stable than a paddle boarder on our lake? With a boat full of ballast and full of people with wake surfers behind us. And those folks are fine. I'm not talking once, twice. This is several. We've been surfing on Lake Fairleigh since 2009. This is not last year. So this is completely based in fear, I believe, from folks who have no experience related to it. Because I have personal and extensive experience in this. This is punitive. It's outrageous. There's nothing ever like it. Perhaps we need to regulate ocean waves. And big waves, and we regulate people. These folks have, we use it together. We're very careful about our other users in the lake. And we don't surf and try to go near the folks, and we try to have mutual respect, and we have good behavior in our driving and our wake sports on our lake. And further, from the outset of this meeting, Laura, you said that these proposed changes are based in to reduce the conflict. The question to the state and others: what conflict are we talking about? We've been in these rules for 1 year. I'm under the understanding that there's been no actual conflict. So I think that these are based in fear and not in fact or I don't see any reason to change the rules as they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Online, it looks like you're Linwood.
Emily Doe
Oh,
has the hand up first. Safety comment.
So,
Am I good to speak?
yes, Emily first.
Perfect. Thank you. So I would just say that my concern with the 50-foot offset or the 500-foot offset is that to have one boat in one activity having something that's different than everything else in the lake, the confusion that that is going to cause among all types of boaters, and is that I mean, everybody knows when you're out there, it's wonderful to have our no wake buoys to give you a sense of space, but even that, it's hard to know, am I at 300 feet? Am I at 500 feet? You know, that is too vague. Not too vague. It's too inconsistent with the rest of the boating rules to have that kind of rule. I think we're going to cause a lot of conflict and confusion around just having one boat, one sport causing that issue. The other thing I want to say when we talk about the docks and the rafts and all that, I do have some concern that since this has become sort of a tension issue among the War of the Roses among the lake on our lake, that I'm concerned that people will just drop a dock in the middle of the lake and drop a dock in the middle of the wake sport zone. And, you know, at this point, we don't have rules where people can put docks and how far off they can be off your property. And that's all technically public water. And so the idea that adding floating docks and stationary docks into that, I think we're going to just add another issue of maybe some people using the intention of that not quite correctly. So I get concerned about adding all those things, that people will do that as a way to control what they want to control. Thank you.
I feel like there's a lot of discussion of that 500-foot rule that makes it sound like it's perhaps somewhat arbitrary, or people have even mentioned punitive. So I'd kind of like to go back to the beginning a little bit about where that came from. Meg Handler, Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes. And we started our organization over 4 years ago. And we started really from a position of research. And we talked to a lot of different organizations. And more importantly, we analyzed data from scientific studies in at least one case of peer-reviewed. So this idea of an offset is not arbitrary. It is an analysis of wave energy and power studies that were done using principles of physics and wave energy and very rigorous studies. Our initial focus of it was environmental. And so we did look at the offset from shore rather than other people, principally, because we were concerned about shoreline erosion and damage to structures on the shoreline. We very, very strongly support EEC extending that to other users. And I think that became more apparent as time went on, that if we're concerned about damage to shorelines, we certainly ought to be concerned about damage to people and users of the lake. In terms of conflict, DEC did recognize and explicitly state that wake boats, wake sports are not a normal use under the definitions of use of rules. I think there is no question, you can tell just by the discussion in this one room, that there is no question that there is a conflict among users. So I think it's important to recognize that this number certainly does not come from no place. It is certainly not punitive. It comes from wave energy and power data that is derived. So at least the position of our organization is we very, very strongly support extending that principle to this safety offset from other people. we believe the 500 feet is not enough. It's not sufficient. The data that is published indicates that you need an amount greater than 575 feet for wave energy and greater than 600 feet for wave power. And that was, again, determined from scientific studies. I think Danny before me has mentioned the precautionary principle, but I would like to read that because some people may not really know what that actually is. Here's a quote which says what the precautionary principle is.
Where are you quoting from?
I took it, I don't have an exact reference, but I'm
I
certain.
think that's important for public comment. You have to be able to quote the source.
I'm happy to provide that at a later date. But as a cornerstone of good public policy, when an activity raises threats of harm to human health or the environment, precautionary measures should be taken, even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. So we feel that the 500-foot offset, both from the shoreline, but also from other users, is more appropriately 700 feet because the studies indicate that that is what is actually necessary for waves to dissipate, and because the technology is changing, boats are becoming larger, more powerful, and it's important to apply the precautionary principle to make sure that we are adequately protecting our environment and also other people.
Thank you. I think we can, is it Linwood Mixer?
Yes, good evening. My name is Linwood Mixer. I'm at Maidstone Lake, and I'm a prior 25-year instructor of water safety or boating safety, and also a lay monitor person for the same time frame. We had work and talk about 200 foot all the time during the course back in the day. We took students out to ask them on land where 200 feet were, and they had no clue. They'd always say something closer to 100 feet. And so right now at 200 feet, you know, folks haven't got a clue, and you can see it between boats out here at the lake with all the new people that are coming on and buying property. They don't know the rules. They're well within 200 feet, but law enforcement, because I know the law enforcement people that have worked this lake have had an issue because who's an expert at measuring the distance when you're on the water or between the boats or between the boat and shore? You know, who's deciding where that 500 foot is? And if you were to put, like one gentleman mentioned, buoys, and somebody hits one of those at night or crashes with those, who's liable for doing that? And I want to talk more at the end when you get to other topics about enforcement, the fines and things of that nature. But I think 200 feet is consistent, and I think that's where it should be. The photograph you've got of the existing Maidstone Lake is working fine. We only have one, maybe two wake boats, and most of them behave themselves. They once in a while get warmed up ahead of time, and before they get to where they should, they've got wake going. But law enforcement's hard to come by. I don't care. And if you can't enforce it, then you could have whatever you want. And if you're not an expert, how are you going to determine the distances? And I'd like to see that one proven at a rules meeting, or would that actually go to court? Like I say, I'd like to talk about that at the end of the meeting, if you would. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll take just one more on the safety offset and try to get to the next topic. Eric.
I'm Eric Splatt from Castleton, Vermont, and I don't agree with the change only through reasons of enforcement and other people, because all motorboats on the lake are supposed to say the 200 feet from other people, especially people that are doing any water sport. And the general boating public know that rule. For them not to know or own a wake boat on their own and know that they have to stay 500 feet from the wake boat now doesn't make sense to me. Makes sense to stick with what's been, and that's how it is. And the 500 feet to shore, the wakeboarders will know to do that. And they're the ones that have the boat, not the rest of the boating community.
Thank you. Okay. We're gonna move to the next topic, but again, please, I'm just trying to keep us on track for time, because I know we all don't want to be here for 5 hours, but there's a lot to say. So if we have time at the end, we can revisit topics, and also please submit things that I as well. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if there'll be a lot to say here about municipal delegation, but I wanted to throw it in there. It's a little bit technical in a way. Maybe there's no interest in talking about this, but if you've had a chance to look at our track changes document, it's very extensive, the language put in there. Basically, the statute gives a little bit of information about that. The use of public waters can be delegated to a community, to a municipality, and it requires just 2 things, maybe 3 if I can remember, but it's that the municipality follow the use of public waters rules as written, and that the municipality adopt an ordinance to handle how they would that use of public waters rules. So we've added in a bunch of language to say, does it have to be full delegation? Does the municipality control the entire set of rules or just a portion of the rules? And so the way it's been handled so far is that towns can manage have municipal control over mooring fields. So it's already been partially delegated in the past. We're just kind of clarifying how it's already been done, identifying roles and making sure that there are requirements for formal agreements between towns and municipalities, the boundaries and abilities to initiate rulemaking within a municipality, and some clarifications. So this might be outside of the interest of this group, but I wanted to put it up there because it was a lengthy addition to our proposed changes. Yes.
John Wooten, Lake Parker. Does that mean like a town can decide to ban wake sports in their town, or they can only follow whatever the next rule is?
The interpretation from the statute that we've received, that if a town wants to have local control over a specific use, then they have to adhere to the use of public waters rules. So they couldn't then make up a rule that is different than what's already exists.
Why would any town want to do it if they can't do it?
I mean, this is how there's municipal delegation across the state for a couple different regulations, and that's the standard requirement. Sometimes towns like to do stuff like that. Like, for example, with shoreline protection, there are a few towns that have municipal delegation, and I think it's because they like to wrap it up in their town zoning, so they are in charge of it all the way through. And I know there used to be delegation allowed for a lot of wastewater programs. I don't believe there's any allowed. But it was the same thing. It was like to have that local control. I think for a town, there are no specific rules about mooring fields. So if a town wanted to manage a mooring field and perhaps take payment or something for that, they can set up that agreement in that rule, because they're not defying any use of public waters rules. They're not acting, so that's allowed. But the ability to take municipal control of wake boats and then ban them on a lake, sports eligible lake, doesn't legally align with what the use of public water statute says. Are there any comments about this online?
Diane later.
Okay, Diane. I think you might be muted, Diane.
I think I got it.
Okay. Yeah.
That was exactly my question, Laura, the one that John asked.
Okay.
So just to clarify that by taking over the municipal delegation, a town does not have the authority to change any of the rules.
Right. They could potentially, there's no prohibition on making rules, but they have to align with the use of public waters rules. So I'm not really quite sure what an example of that would be.
But that then does not solve the problem of a town right now that says, has submitted a petition which has been denied and still chooses to petition in the hopes that they can prohibit.
But like by asking for local control.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't, based on the what the statute says, I don't think that would be legally defensible.
Okay, the clarification I think is really important for a lot of the people that will be attending these meetings. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, Pat? I saw your hand up earlier. Was it answered?
I just have a very brief comment.
Yeah.
Swazi Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds. We would recommend that included in all of the things to do in order to do this delegation, that they should also.
Pat, can you speak up?
They should also be required to review what their plans are with the local lake association. And we feel that's important because the local lake associations have so much work and responsibility that they do on the lakes, and that this should be in concert with what's going on there. And it also reflects what you are putting into the petition side. If a lake association wants to file a petition, your revisions are going to require that to be reviewed with the local municipality. So we feel it should be reciprocal on both sides of that. So I'll be sending that to you in writing, but
okay, thank you.
We're going to be recommending.
All right. Any other municipal delegation questions online? Okay. In the room, yes.
I'm Peter Berger. I'm the chairman of the Fairleigh Select Board. And right now, Lake Maury is unique. It's totally within the town of Fairleigh. For the past 3 years, so in August of 2022 to August of 2024, when we had an alum treatment that was an $850,000 cost to the state. And previous to that, for town has contributed through the taxpayers and the annual budgets, another $1.5 million to lake quality. The idea of not being able to have a unique dispensation for the lake and control of that. 5 wake boats that are known on the lake. I know there's consideration of reducing the number of lakes. And if this becomes targeted and we don't have the ability to control that, then those funds and that time is at risk. So I'm looking for some way to have a conversation with DEC about how we proceed as a unique lake within the state.
Yeah, I think that's something great. We can definitely. I think, this is one of some of the language we have in there about considering how if a wake sports eligible lake meets the criteria to have wake sports, but there is some activity, some other water quality management activity to be impacted by wake sports. I think that requires a deeper look into how the impact and
It's a 20-foot versus what the data is showing and other studies around there's safety involved in it.
Right.
All the things that we're talking about are all in question because there's no, based on what I see scroll that Misha was putting up, the currency doesn't allow the input of the dynamics of what's happening with wake boats within the law.
All right. Do we have any? Oh,
Emily Doe.
Me again. I do have a question about that. Just hearing that segment about Lake Maury, which I also love and sailed on for a long time. What would happen to that discussion around wake boats? And I know the issue with the algae and all of that. what happens to all the other boats that we're talking about? Just motorboats, bass boats, little dinghies. What happens with all those kind of boats that are being put in and out? I mean, I know Maury has an incredibly hard boat put in area, so maybe people choose to not go there as much. But does that discussion then evolve into all the boats on all of our lakes when we talk about that? Because I know one of the discussions that I've been thinking about is, you know, boats with fishermen, they can draw on water and hold water to keep their fish in for the day. And just like wake boats, we let our water out. When you start discussing things like that, does that expand all boats instead of just wake boats?
This
That's what you said
specific
was a
topic,
1%.
sorry.
No, I was just, when he talked about Maury and like, yeah, you would have to consider that because they did have such a big issue and that was awful. Then, because like we talked about, wake boats is only 1%, right? So then does that expand to all the boats that go on the lakes?
The very specific issue with this is alum treatments are a very expensive, as you were alluding to, a very expensive treatment where substance is put into a water body to bind phosphorus and keep it in the sediment to prevent algae blooms from happening. And a couple lakes across the state that have had this treatment, it's very effective and very expensive. And the concern is that the downward draft propulsion of a wake boat could potentially disturb some of that sediment and prevent this alum treatment from being useful. And so we're trying to understand that connection and what precautions should be taken on lakes that have had alum treatments specifically. So it's really, this is an alum treatment specific question. Okay. So I'm going to go to this next topic about our proposal to remove the home lake rule and the proof of decontamination sections and to replace it with language to meet our spread prevention goals with our limited infrastructure. So there's basically three components. We want to cross-reference 1454, the transport law. And a lot of this is done to strengthen our enforcement ability, to clarify in the rules that it is against the law to transport aquatic invasive plants and animals. We want to add in some enforcement and penalty language. I have a little example of what we have written here. It's all very legalese, but again, this is to clarify the statutory authority to issue penalties and fines, and then the final component is to outline roles and responsibilities of the agency and the greeter program, so that the greeter program is required to do these inspections and they're required to be trained by the agency, and the agency is required to make these materials. And these are all kind of come from the statute itself about what's allowed and what's not, and what everybody is required to do. So I'm assuming there's a lot of questions about this. I'll start with you, Eric.
Eric Splatt from Castle again. Being in the boat business myself and knowing about wake boats, the home lake rule doesn't really make a difference because many of the boats do not travel. If all of our customers that bought a wake boat have seen their trailer ever, I'd be surprised. They never have seen their trailer since they bought the boat. We take the boat in and out of their lake and it stays specifically on that lake and goes back to that lake. So as far as that goes, it doesn't really make much difference. And I don't disagree or agree with it, but it doesn't really, it doesn't matter. They're not going anywhere. So, it's a very, very high percentage. I would say above 99. But as far as the boats go, they have new technology for decontamination. They have a system on the boat, decontamination mode. Everything's flushed out, 140-degree water by yourself or the greeter. And it's set up to help people do that. And the older boats can be converted to do that very well if they needed to be.
All right. Somebody unlock. Does anybody have their hand up online?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's start.
So you require decontamination equipment in the boat?
We do not have language to require decontamination in the boat. We just require a decontamination following our guidance. And we recommend hot water decontamination for wake boats.
Have the equipment, then you could require it to be put in existing and new boats.
Suggestion, I mean, I think that idea would have to be thought out about what we can require and what we can't, but you know, I know there's, as Eric was saying, there are a lot of products out there now, like that.
I can answer this question.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, so pretty much all the boats that were designed, what you would do is you would take the boat out of the water, you would get your hot water, hot steam pressure washer, because you're mostly worried about what's in between the bunks, and you want to make on the trailer, you want to make sure that everything's killed there. So you do a hot steam pressure wash. And then from that point going, any of the wake boats that have been since 1998, that was the first wake boat was produced. So they've been selling them since 1998. They've been going all over the lakes in the country, you know, and to decontaminate them, it's basically the same thing. Each ballast bag, tanks years ago, they're bags now, so they're kind of removable and whatever. But by doing the 140-degree water, you can connect your hose or put your hose up in the vents of all those bags, run it for 5 minutes, and then flush your motor and you're good. It's very simple. It could be a best practice, you know, for the greeters to tell them what to do. A lot of the greeters wouldn't know, but I've, you know, been over it with them many times when we don't have a decontamination station.
So this is equipment that comes with the boat?
Yeah. It's the design of the boat. So you basically.
Not equipment.
It's not equipment.
I said it's designed that you can do it. I mean, they have new boats now that come with a designated spot to be able to put a hose like threaded into the boat. But times before, how we've done it is you just pump the water through that same spot. So basically the boats are equipped with be able to make it easy to do. But it's very conscious. People are very conscious about that.
That's something you can look into for requirements for boats?
Yeah, we can.
Well, it's not, I'm just saying it's, the new ones are designed to have a thread in it, but you can do it to any boat. So it's not really you know, I'm saying the new ones are designed because it just makes it easier.
If the lake doesn't have
It's saying that
cleaning station, then it doesn't make any difference.
Well, there's none. We do all of our own boats at our shop. So when they come and go, we have a whole system set up. And when you travel over to New York State, I assume they have a bigger budget. The system,
Everybody to do that.
yeah, any boat.
I think that does.
Self-decontaminated at your shop.
Yeah, every boat.
We offer
For every boat. Every boat. Kayak, life vests, anything. But
A boat where you can't see.
Like fishing boats.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Any boat is what we should.
any boat is what I'm saying,
We're
yeah.
talking about.
Go to the online,
Putnam.
All right, Rodney?
Hi, I just wanted to kind of echo Eric's remark that, we moved here in 2015. And we went to another lake once, maybe twice. 99% of us, my trailer sits in the yard for the whole summer. My boat sits out front. It doesn't leave this lake. And if I needed to do a cleaning, it's a play. I'm happy to do it if I needed to. We went to Lake George once, and every boat that goes to Lake George is required to basically go through a hazmat station and a cleaning. It's pretty extensive over there. But I think for 90, a large percentage, like to echo what Eric said, is a lot of us, our boats sit in one lake. We only go to one lake and we don't trailer.
Yes.
Ginny Lawless. So 2 points, one related to this conversation, in that you remarked, Laura, earlier that 20 boats actually were recorded having been transferred from one lake to another. So there is some activity, and these are only the ones that are reported going through accesses. That there are many occasions whereby people will trailer a boat to a private residence and then enter the lake in that way. So they may not even come up as being registered as a boat user. But
just to clarify, our data was 20 launches were recorded as being from other water bodies. So it wasn't necessarily 20 actual.
With 20 launches. So, but my, the main point I wanted to make is that, this almost sounds as if there's a presumption that each lake has a greeter program that is up and running and would have access to hot water, be able to help to decontaminate. And both of those things are not present at this point in time.
Yeah, and this is something that we are, we want to build the decontamination programs to be more robust across the state. I mean, it would make sense to target them in certain areas. Right now we don't have that many. There are some available, especially around Lake Champlain, but there aren't a lot of them around the state.
Is the test, you're gonna do a test in the Northeast Kingdom or Newport or something? Is that gonna happen?
Yeah,
We've been
this
operating summer. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay. I don't see any hands up online, so let me get the gentleman in the back.
My name's Jim Curley. I guess my question on this is, if we're truly worried about invasives, why then are we not talking about this rule for all boats? It seems like we should be super concerned about any boat that's going into any body of water to put wakeboard boats out as the only ones that could be violating this. Seems punitive, as was said earlier. And it to me, in listening to some of the testimony that was given to the Senate committee, I think it was earlier this year, the responsible wakes folks, I think, had a person that said that it takes a tiny bit of water. So we can be talking about canoes, we can be talking about fishing boats, we can be talking about anything. This is Pandora's box. And if it's for one, it should be for all.
Well, just to clarify, that is kind of what we're proposing here, is that we're removing some specific decontamination language around wake boats that we didn't really feel like added that much extra protection. And instead, we want to focus our limited resources on really improving and clarifying decontamination standards for all boats across the state. So this language does not affect just wake boats, it's all watercraft.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Diane? Oops, still muted.
Control.
Don't know if I can unmute her. Can't do it from here.
I have it. I'm sorry. It's not in the place that I'm looking for it. Yeah, I think the reality of this situation is the DEC clearly is working with limited funds that are nowhere near adequate to do what we would ideally like to do, which would be to provide a comprehensive program for all boats across the whole state. And I think then we have to look at allocating the funds to prevent the largest threats. Now, there's research out there that says in most boats, there may be several cups of water that are retained after some of these live wells are flushed. But then there could be 18, 25 gallons of water that are left in the ballast tanks. So there's a much greater threat from one wake boat carrying invasive species than there is from one of these other boats, or clearly from a paddleboard, which is just passing by. The statutes are really very clear. They require that boats be subject to inspection and decontamination. But by design, these boats cannot be inspected, and it's almost impossible to decontaminate them. There's also another statute that prohibits discharging water from a boat into public bodies of water. And clearly, these boats, I'm sorry about that, these boats are designed to pump the water in and to pump the water out. So on both counts, we're breaking very fundamental statutes. We are bending over backwards to accommodate a very, very small portion of the industry. I'd just like to say that of the 18 lakes that will be left on the list, if these rules are adopted as currently proposed, 11 of them will be in the Northeast Kingdom. I attended a wonderful program last weekend on oligotrophic lakes, and it was held at Lake Willoughby. And one of the key speakers was Kelly Merrill. And I was surprised that there are only about 7% of lakes in the United States that are oligotrophic. These are the most important water resources that we should be looking to protect. And out of the 11 lakes in the Northeast Kingdom that would be left on the list of 18, she identified 9 of them, which are oligotrophic lakes. It's really, really sad that this is where all this boat traffic is going to wind up. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack.
Jack Witness, Lake Raponda, Responsible Waste. I'm really glad to hear that there's so much interest among wake boaters about AIS. I really am. I think that's really great information. It's not been information that's out there. I'm hoping you'll put it into the public comments, and I hope the public comments will be made available to us, because the wake boat industry has known about this problem for over 10 years. And, I don't think that they paid as much attention to it as they perhaps should have. And I think you need to share this information, and the studies that need to be done, I believe, need to be, rigorous scientific studies. I'm not saying they haven't done them, but, if the wake boat industry is selling wake boats and they're telling you something, I think it ought to be verified, by other means. And on Mr. Curley's point, I think that was addressed. These wake boats have a large volume. We don't have that volume, 10 gallons of water left over in their tanks compared to a canoe or a kayak. I mean, that's really one of the reasons why this is the case, and you can't look at. So doing the proper scientific studies, and I hope you guys will put that in there. I think that's really important for us to all get on the same page and to really have this decontamination issue solved. Jenny and the DECs had a group on this, and we've been looking for stories like this, or at least I have, and we've not seen anything. So, we really need your help in making this work, not just for wake boats, but for other boats, and doing this properly, rigorously, and scientifically, and really being confident that that's what we have. I think that's what we all wish for and would like to see.
Well, the top priority on all boaters, 20 boats were recorded going back and forth. How many other boats went back and forth? Yeah. Think about it. So you got like 20 boats, even if they had 8 gallons, we're talking thousands of boats traveling, maybe even more than that. And as a boater or somebody myself, what makes me different than anybody else? I care much about my lake, and I want to make sure it's clean. In fact, I live on one of the cleanest lakes in the country in New York on Lake George in the summer. And I don't want any invasives to come in my dock. I drink the water. It's Class A drinking water. And every boater that goes on that lake, that's their top priority.
We're all on the same page with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our shop, every time somebody buys or purchases a used boat, we thoroughly go over everything with them, show them how to pick the weeds off, the final, violations. This has been boating's top priority as far as industry goes for a long time.
As the public needs the confidence that this is scientifically valid and that this really works.
I mean, check their boats and do everything on a regular basis.
We'll take one online and then I'll get to you next, okay? Thank you.
Johnson.
Lisa Johnson. Think. Yeah. Lisa, you're muted if you're trying to speak. We can't hear you.
Put your hand down.
I did that. Sorry. Try to keep myself on track. Lisa,
Okay.
okay, yes, we hear you.
Okay. I'm,
Two hot
I,
dogs, one roll,
I know what
Dijon mustard.
Dijon mustard.
So, thank you.
I live
What
on,
you're up
Lake-
to?
hello,
More beans?
hello?
Hi.
Yes, hi. My name is Lisa Johnson. I live on Lake Fairley, and we have had quite a history of conflict and people being hurt on Lake Fairley due to wake boats and damage to the shoreline, and it has caused quite a bit of tension in the community. And I'm not a scientist, but I've read the research that has been sent to the department, to your department, and I know that there has been a great deal of documentation about the fact that these boats cause problems with invasive species, also just by tearing them up and spreading them because they go so deep. And both lakes that are not large, lakes that are not that deep, are especially affected. And I've heard a lot of passionate voices that are extremely excited about the prospects of expanding the use of wake boats. But I can tell you from a personal experience, it's not good where I live. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take one final question on this in the room.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my name is Sam Romano, and I'm with the National Marine Manufacturers Association. I just really wanted to say and emphasize that I sincerely appreciate the conversational format of this discussion, and I'm really here listening and taking notes on everybody's feedback. So please forgive me if I'm looking down at my notes. I just want to make sure that I'm addressing everything appropriately. I did just want to echo Eric's comments that wake boat owners, just like everybody else, so kayakers, kids playing with buckets and shovels, paddle boarders, other motorized boat users, we all care deeply about AIS and we all want to use and enjoy these waters. Also earlier, I did just most respectfully want to address that a gentleman in a wonderful shirt that I love, by the way, mentioned that the industry stated that we were the ones who suggested the 3,000-foot run, if I'm understanding that correctly. And most respectfully, I just wanted to say that that isn't true. We don't. I'm currently unaware of any statement our industry has made supporting this, and I'd be really interested in seeing it. And then I just wanted to hit on one final point too. As we've talked about a lot in this discussion, less than 1% of registered boats in Vermont are wake boats. This rule has passed. It is the strictest in the nation. And when you look through ANR's report, there seems to be no substantiated claims or violations. It's barely been a year since the implementation. And I was just respectfully wondering what specifically has prompted this extra rulemaking. And I just wanted to close with this. We really feel that better enforcement and also education is a much better way to address these issues versus overregulation. As Eric mentioned, as I mentioned, as all the everybody here loves to enjoy the waters, and there's certainly a way where we can all do that, enjoy that without overregulation and education, because we really all care. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, in the little bit of time we have left, I just want to open it up to just other topics. Well, I know maybe we'll try to keep it to like 10 minutes or so. I know that several people had said, well, we should re-examine the 20-foot depth requirement, which I know was brought up earlier when we were talking about the wake sports definition. May not need to talk about that again. We have gotten comments about could there be language in the use of public waters rules that that handles exceptional water quality different in the way we review things in the use of public waters framework. But if anybody had any other thoughts, we'll just take a few minutes. And again, you can submit comments in writing. We will read them all. And I'll start with you back here. Then I'll get to you next. Sorry.
Thanks very much, Laura. And I want to thank Misha and Jenny too. So by way of introduction, my name is Zach Harvey. I'm the representative for Castleton in Vermont State House. I serve on the House Judiciary, so the world of environment is something that I'm getting up to speed on in real time. And I think, Laura, to your earliest point, I think it's a really important one, is that the ANR's reaction is to environmental impacts and technical capacities. It's not public opinion. That's certainly in the realm of the legislature and for us to address with legislation in the House. And I think importantly, I want to cite from ANR's own report on the 2024 impact of the rule. And there's 5 complaints in the year of 2024, and 4 were completely unfounded. 1 was referred to Vermont State Police and Commissioner Morrison, and 0 were related to the impact of wake boats. So I think that's just a really important table setting of looking at the impact of the rule and the fact that there have been no relevant complaints related to the wakeboarding impact. I think beyond that, and one of the things that I'm very proud of is, I try to dabble in a lot of different areas of policy. I get regular briefings from my colleagues on the environmental committee. And I think one of the key scientific points that was introduced most early in your presentation was on loon nesting patterns. And I personally haven't seen any kind of loon nesting studies that have been commissioned from the DEC by ANR. So I'm curious, are you aware of any that haven't done at this point, or is this just something that was relative to the earlier rulemaking?
We received a lot of comment from the Vermont Center for Eco Studies about the impacts of wake sports on loon nesting. And I do think some of it is potential impacts, maybe not necessarily documented effects that could be directly related to wake sports, but it was, this was advice we had gotten from the loon biologists at the Vermont Center.
Sure, and I'll be following up with my colleagues to make sure that I have relevant studies on hand to make sure.
And if you wanted to reach out, I believe all that information is in the public comment period that we had for some of these petitions to prohibit wake sports, so I can share that information.
Sure, and I do have a follow-up, in specifically looking at the way that the language was crafted in the new recommendations for 2025 and to go forward. Is ANR currently consulting with any third-party organizations, or is this all of your own language that you've crafted in the rule?
It's been internally crafted.
So no outside impact on the language and recommendations. It's great to know. Again, I know this is a very thankless job, and I really appreciate you guys trying to get your arms around this, because it really is. I mean, it's very important. All of us enjoy Vermont's lakes. The last thing is not so much a question, but it is a recommendation. Is specifically looking at ANR's own report and looking at Lake Bombazine being home to the largest population of wakeboarding boats in the entire state. I think it would be a really prudent thing for the agency to have one of these listening sessions down in Rutland County that would give access to Lake Bombazine, concerned citizens, and most importantly, wakeboarding boaters and owners of the boats. So again, thank you for having this great conversation, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. We'll take a question online. And then...
Diane later again.
Okay, Diane.
I found my button. I'd like to just refer to the quote on the research, the incidents that were reported last summer. I think that was there was a discussion last summer that there is credible Pew research that very few violent crimes are reported. And therefore, the fact that there's only a small number of reports that came in last summer is really meaningless. The 2 meetings, the 2 public hearings were filled with discussions from people about how they were leaving the field when wake boats came out, or not going out when wake boats were out. So I think that people are removing themselves and preventing incidents. So I really would hope that we're not going to continue to quote those data. I'd also like to highlight the fact that there has been an extraordinary decrease, at least in some of our lakes, on the number of boats and people on the lakes because of the reduction in traffic from Canada. So I would hope that we are not going to point to any data that we see this summer as being definitive, because I think that's going to be an anachronism. I did have a comment, Laura, you asked for anything that might not have been included. You provided, the DEC has provided itself with some flexibility for what happens with changing water levels. And I think that that was a great add. And I think it provides you a flexibility that you need. With the surge in technology and the development of new and more powerful wake boats, we're still seeing this 7-foot wake being advertised. I don't think it's available yet, but it seems that it would be a wonderful idea if you also provided some kind of flexibility to deal with changes in technology. Something that would incorporate basically the precautionary principle that gives you the flexibility to recognize when situation changes and to deal with that. So I'd just like to put that out there for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, here.
I'm Kate Brown. We drove down here from Lake Caspian, and I don't own a wake boat. I don't sell wake boats. I don't represent the wake boat lobby, but I am here to represent the loons on Caspian Lake. There's a sanctuary. Loons are almost endangered, and they've worked really hard. So they pay me in their song, really appreciate. And I would really, and what scares me is a 7-foot wake, the regulations that were for technology that's now past those regulations. We hear that we might need a 700-foot restriction to stop those wakes from energy, that wave energy hitting the shore. So I think we do need to be careful and think about not just human safety and human pleasure, but also that of the natural environment that are there. So that's why we're at these lakes, is to hear those loons in the morning as we wake up. So I hope we can give some consideration to that in addition to our motion.
Great. Can take another comment from online. Linwood Bixer.
Thank you. I was hoping you could be coming back to me here before the end of the meeting. When you pass a rule, is there a fine assigned to that? Is there a scheduled fine? Because all of you folks or the rule last year was just a warning or slap on the hand if anybody was in violation. And first of all, is there a fine that goes with the existing rule on wakeboards, boats?
There is a fine for violating the use of public waters rules. There is a fine for negligent operation of a motorboat, which can kind of fit into a wake boat or any other boat. So there are fines associated with that. Generally, when a brand new rule, so last year was the first year that we had this rule regulating wake boats. When a brand new rule comes out, the game wardens kind of engage in some education. So a lot of people might come and have never heard of this rule. And they're like, you're outside the wake sport zone. Instead of giving them a fine immediately, they give them a warning and try to tell them where to get the right information. That's pretty standard whenever there's a new agency rule, that in the first year or so, there's like an outreach and education buffers to make sure that the people reasonably know about the regulation. But yes, there are fines associated with it.
Yeah, well, when you talked about negligence, and I'm thinking I've been involved in law enforcement, you really have to have something that pins down the exact offense instead of having a broad thing like negligence. That's just my own experience.
No, the game wardens have a whole matrix that they use in all different types of negligence. It's a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but they have a whole system that they use to.
Well, I'll take the time if I can tomorrow to reach out to my local warden and have a chat with him. But just to continue on for a second, I heard the concerns with the loons. We've got two pair normally of nesting loons here at Maidstone Lake. And we have more problems with either predators, raccoons, whatever, getting to the nests, or people that are kayaking, canoeing, getting right up close to shore, looking at the nest and scaring one of the loons off the nest. So we have more problems with really non-motorized vessels with loons than motorized vessels. And of course, the lake level is important, because if the lake level goes up too high, it floods out the nest. If it's too low, the loon can't get onto the nest or get from the water to the nest. So I look at that. Another thing is that we were talking about all the boats, and that's the concern I have is you've got bass boats, you've got other fishing boats with holding tanks. Nobody's checking those to make sure they're empty of what's going on. Another point would be almost all these boat ramps, and I'm going to call them fishing accesses by Fish and Game. Fish and Game should be involved in all these discussions about decontaminating because they've got it's their property where this would happen. And we've talked about it at our lake, but you need a big holding tank to flood if you want to wash all these boats and there's no electricity. And who's going to pump out the tank? Who's going to build it and all that good stuff? And we also have a state park. So people come in with boats and they can actually put all their canoes, kayaks, paddle boards, whatever, directly in the lake without washing, people could say what they wanted. It's only going to take one little piece of a milfoil or whatever out of a kayak canoe to get things started. We're fortunate at Maidstone Lake that we don't have any milfoil or any invasive species. But that's a concern. And I'll be honest with you, we got airplanes that are coming in here and doing touch and goes all the time. And where have they been? And it's causing, they could be bringing in milfoil and we don't know about it. So that's just that part. But I think personally, my closing comment was the reduction or I should say the increase that you're looking for is because of the special interest of some of the people on the lake. And I can point out people here at this lake here that don't want wake boats. They don't want personal watercraft. And I could see them driving the conversation by having more restrictions. With that, thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you. All right, I think we'll take one more comment in the room and then one more comment online and wrap it up because it's a little after 8 o'clock. All right.
Hi, Stu Arnold, Caspian Lake. We did, one of the petitioners did get a denial, and I spoke with Jenny, Pete, Jason in the last month about this. We were disappointed in that, and that we have asked in a letter to them a consideration to reverse that denial, allow our items that we had in our petition to move along with in conjunction with this process, because there's a couple of additional criteria that you didn't mention here. In our petition and some of the others, we presented convincing evidence that there were no wake boats ever present on Caspian, not as residents anyways, and the transient is extremely minimal. We have no invasive species to date. And we are also, as Diane mentioned, one of the oligotrophic pristine lakes that have high quality water. We felt those that collectively were enough to be distinguishable, that from an environmental and from a user perspective, we don't have wake boats now. We don't want wake boats from a population. There's no one on our lake asking to have a wake boat on Caspian Lake. I did a little study, there's a few other lakes in that small group left in the kingdom. So I think there's something to be said as a criteria for if you don't have wake boats and your municipality and your population by association don't want them. I think there's a consideration that could be a criteria to exempt you from having them. Our population gets along fine. We do have boats that water ski. We have a sailing community that uses the whole lake 3 days a week. They're putting on races, and they use the whole lake from going end to end to end to end. So there's a usage that's collaborative. Sometimes by day, the fishing boats are on in the morning. The scullers have the calm water. Skiers like that calm water too, and they just collaborate. But I guess that's our normal use. And wake boats are considered not a normal use or wave sports. And we don't want that to happen as a collective population. So we would like you to consider criteria of no use be an eligible criteria to exempt the lake from having it. Also, I can think that having AIS in a no is possible. But I thought about that a little bit more. We're all know when it comes to zebra mussels. There are only a few places that we have zebra mussels in the state, and they're in the big lakes. And so I just want, all bodies of water in the state to be protected from the spread of zebra mussels. That goes back to that collective, all boats need to be decontaminated. So if there's, you spoke to it as well about the high water quality. Potentially there's a way we can look high water quality lake being, maybe we can come up with the metrics. So I'd like to add that as a thought as we go into this next month.
Thank you. And we'll take one final comment online from Chris Owen.
Hey, good evening. I should have introduced myself earlier. Chris Owen. I've been on Holland Pond 34 years as a lay monitor and loon observer. And to the question about loons, they nest 4 inches, 2 to 4 inches above waterline typically. Wake sports produce waves that are 6 to 12 times more powerful than a planing boat, fishing boats, ski boats, tubers, etc. Please bear that in mind. Secondly, regarding fishery biologists weighing in response to our friend from Maidstone, I have emails from the state fishery biologists in District 5 suggesting that wake sports should be banned in all inland lakes in Vermont. I hope the scientists at DEC can prevail with a new rule and that the environment is more important than recreational interest. And thank you, Laura and others, for your time this evening.
Thank you. Oh, it's not working. Thank you all for being here, and this is, part of a long rulemaking process, lots of input, but please send us comments. We want to hear what you have to say. It's been great having more of a conversation and hearing lots of different perspectives. Stay involved, and I was trying to get my final slide to show up. It's not advanced. Oh, here we go. Okay, so in case anybody wants to, you can find the rulemaking webpage. That's where kind of all the information that's needed. Send comments, written comments to that email. And thank you all for being here tonight. And like I said, we're doing a second meeting tomorrow night in Newport.
Thank you for running.
Thank you.
The beverage center of North.
Thank you.
Yeah, how's it been going? You guys been busy?
That's Cap.
You did.